Every one of the things that ever happened to us, whether they're emotional, physical, or energetic, where someone shut their heart down, left us, didn't explain something fully, rejected us in some way, shape, or form, it felt like an abandonment, some sense of abandonment. Now, if someone had been there to be able to sit with us, to feel our feelings, to process them, metabolize them, and we could have actually felt less alone in the midst of all of that, it might not have caused the next thing, which is a wound of self-abandonment. Hello, everyone. Deb here. I'm so excited to talk to you about something that is kind of funny. You're gonna be like, wait, you're excited to talk about this subject? Yeah, well, because I think knowing this subject is a critically important element to finding our way through to the other side. I'm recording this just a little bit before Thanksgiving and won't be released for a little bit because we are currently rolling out the Whole Soul Way. So if you haven't already done it, you might want to go back and to season one and start at the first lesson, the first video, and tune in to the Whole Soul Way program because it's awesome. And it's the thing that I've been teaching women for the past 4 or 5 years. And it's the antidote to self-abandonment, which is what we're going to talk about today. It's the way to come back and reclaim access to ourselves and to come into wholeness within. And I want that for you. So go check it out. But you can keep listening today, of course. So, self-abandonment, in my own opinion and my experience, is the core wound that we are all experiencing, every one of us. Now, this is not going to be the last time that I talk about self-abandonment because there are all kinds of angles and ways of looking at it and thinking about it. But let's just start by whatever comes out of me today about self-abandonment. And that's going to be the stake of the ground for talking about self-abandonment. I think self-abandonment is the core wound that we are all suffering with right now. But I don't think it's the original pain. I think it was the thing that happened after something else happened. So I want you to just even conjure up the possibility that you have experienced abandonment in your life. Now, I'm not really talking so much about your adult life or even your late teens. I'm talking about really at a very young age that you experienced some forms of abandonment. Now, that doesn't mean that you didn't experience it later in your life, but the most relevant formative experiences are under 5 and even in the womb, things that we won't even be able to consciously remember. And you don't have to consciously remember this, but you have to imagine that because we're human beings in relationship with people who are imperfect, and that very few human beings are able to meet the needs of every single other person in their life, including their children, there were probably times when we perceived an experience as being abandoned. Even if we didn't have those words, we might have felt it in our body. So we have words that we can put toward everything now, but under 5, it might have just been a deep, painful experience, sensations in our body, feelings, emotions. So it could have happened in a big way. Some people were put up for adoption. That's a pretty freaking big abandonment wound, right? That's one that you can say, yeah, look at that one. I could see that. Perhaps you're a child of divorce and one of your parents left the home and then they weren't there as often anymore. Maybe people didn't explain it as well as they needed to. Maybe we just thought they left us. But even if people explained it, it could still feel like that people left us in our lives. Because not everything to a child makes sense. Something that you might be able to explain to an adult, and the adult can make sense of that. A child sometimes will say, but it hurts. It just plain old hurts. Like, ow, that mommy's not here anymore. They don't really care that mommy was unhappy and wanted something more for herself. They are like, but I want mommy, because they're self-centered and that's what they're supposed to be at that age. It could have been a sibling who went off to school and you were super close to that sibling, and then they went off to kindergarten and they just got on that bus and left you. So there are all kinds of ways that we can experience physical abandonment like that. It could have even been something like daddy went to the grocery store and it happened in a way that it felt like you were left. Maybe your heart was really open and you were just loving your time with your dad and you're having so much fun. And then suddenly something happened and all of a sudden he was gone. And you felt this sense that there was this vacancy inside of you and your heart hurt and you didn't even understand it. But at this point, it's this sense that, like I can't control everything around me. People leave me. Why do they leave me? It's this point in our lives. I don't know as a little child how much they're able to fully understand it, but I think we experience it. I think that's what happens is we experience it. I don't know how much we make sense of it. I'm going to give you some other examples. I think that it could have been a child in a crib who was crying and crying and crying and nobody came to them. They were hungry and they weren't getting fed. There's also a whole nother slew of things that happen, which is emotional abandonment. And I would say probably emotional abandonment can, for some, be even harder to reconcile because we may not remember it. We may not even think it matters, but it does. That's the thing. It does. It matters. And it mattered. There was a time when your needs didn't get met, or maybe you were being a certain way and someone had a reaction to it. They didn't like it. They didn't want you to be that way. It was uncomfortable for them, or they thought that it wasn't appropriate or something. And they didn't sit down and tell you, honey, I love you. And my love for you is unconditional. And I'm here with you. And I also want to talk to you about that behavior and how it wasn't kind or something. Like usually what happens is the child just gets someone who looks at them and says, no, stop doing that, or knock it off, or they shush them or something. And it's this internal reaction of, I did something wrong, I'm bad. And I, in that moment, feel some sense of a loss of their love and approval. And that brings up a sense of feeling unsafe inside of me. Every one of the things that ever happened to us, whether they're emotional, physical, or energetic, where someone shut their heart down, left us, didn't explain something fully, rejected us in some way, shape, or form, it felt like an abandonment. Now, if someone had been there to be able to sit with us, to feel our feelings, to process them, metabolize them, and we could have actually felt less alone in the midst of all of that, it might not have caused the next thing, which is a wound of self-abandonment. And the self-abandonment is an ongoing thing that we kept doing and doing and doing and doing, which was when something happened to us where someone abandoned us physically, emotionally, or energetically, psychologically, we made it about us. And our unconscious mind came up with ways that we needed to do something different or be someone different than we are in order to increase the chances of that never happening again. Okay, to decrease the chances of being abandoned or rejected again. So we proactively, prospectively anticipate the possibility of being rejected or abandoned again, and we reject and abandon ourselves. We start cutting off from parts of ourselves. We start saying, that part's not okay. Oh, don't be too loud when daddy gets home from work. Okay, note to self, don't be too loud. And then we start to think maybe we should never be too loud. Maybe being too loud is really bad. I'm going to stop being too loud. Now, it's all up for negotiation whether some of these aspects that we cut off from ourselves on, someone could deem them to be, well, that isn't an appropriate behavior. You shouldn't be that way. But let's just go from a different angle on this. Let's go from the angle that you were born with all of these characteristics, qualities, aspects of yourself, and every other human too. It's the range of being a human. We have the ability to choose to be anything. We can be wildly disrespectful. We can be massively people pleasing. We can be extremely mean and so incredibly kind and loving. We are contradictions and we contain multitudes. It's the truth. And so, even if we choose not to be a certain way at any given moment, we really are everything. When we come in, we are everything. When a child screams and cries, we say, oh, they're screaming and crying because they have no other mechanism to communicate to me that they need something. But if you're older, people would say screaming and crying is something that's no longer appropriate. You need to use your words. Does that mean screaming and crying never has its place? You get hurt or you're in a dangerous situation? No. You might choose when you scream and cry to get your needs met, but it doesn't mean screaming and crying is not within the range of all of who you are. The wholeness of who you are includes every single aspect of humanity, every single feeling, every single negative, quote unquote, negative, positive, bad or good, dark or light aspect is within you and me. We are everything. There is nothing we are not. We are made of the stars. We are all made of the same things. We all come in with all of the aspects of the human condition, of humanity. But what we learn through the process of socialization, again, I'm not even saying that this is a really fundamentally bad thing. We might have to be socialized so that we can be in this world and so that we can exist. But I can tell you that now as an adult, I want you to recognize that the way that you abandon yourself is causing so much pain in your life right now. And I want you to also know that I'm not saying you self-abandoned on purpose. This is a self-protection mechanism. This is what we do because the love and approval of our adults in our life when we are tiny and powerless is imperative. Our safety and survival depends on them not abandoning us. It does. It literally depends on that. So it's incredibly wise and incredibly resourceful to do what we do. We don't know any better because we are human beings that are prioritizing survival first. That's what our human does. That's what our ego does. Our ego, our human, prioritizes safety, survival, and procreation, basically the survival of the species. That trumps everything. So it was very resourceful and wise to do it. And now we have to undo it. That's the key. So when you were little, you learned all these ways that you should and shouldn't be. The things you should and shouldn't do, the things you should and shouldn't say, the ways that you even look at somebody, like, can I look at them that way? Does that win approval? Does that get daddy upset? What is it that I do that really rocks the boat? What do I do that gets me a little bit more attention and love? Dr. Gabor Mate talks about the two primary needs that we have, which are authenticity and acceptance. And as a child, because of our survival-based orientation as human beings, we will always sacrifice our authenticity over acceptance. We will. And when we are forced to do that, because of our circumstances, then we cut off from ourselves. We abandon ourselves. And we choose to please others and be acceptable and palatable and to be accepted by everyone else so that we don't get abandoned, we don't get rejected, we don't lose their love and approval, and we stay safe. Again, wise. And the consequences are playing out in our lives now because we literally picked up the baton from them and we said, okay, I shall continue to reject myself. I shall continue to cut off from these aspects of myself. I will continue to become a palatable, acceptable, enjoyable, pleasant, loving, kind, whatever it is that your family expected of you person. Maybe your family expected you to be tough and not so kind, because that's what's acceptable. That's what makes you a good person in the world. Who knows? It doesn't really matter. But whatever our family set of rules and beliefs and values were, and the roles you needed to play, and the responsibilities that you were given, and the rules, so the roles, and responsibilities, they took you away from being real and from being raw, meaning like having your emotions. You had to be somebody for everybody else. So all of the aspects that were called good, their opposite, you had to discard and put away. One of the things that people will say to me, though, is, well, I don't want to be those things, though. And part of that's because of your conditioning, and part of that's because of our societal conditioning that says certain things aren't good and certain things are better, certain characteristics. And some of it's because it's true. Like in a social situation, there is some level of common courtesy that we expect. And we really would like for people to not just hurt other people without any regard for each other. But it's still within our ability to cause harm to people, whether we use it or not. It's within our ability to lie, cheat, steal, deceive, manipulate, control. You may think these aren't things that you want to be, but if we continue to deny that they exist, we are rejecting ourselves. The more that we bring all of those aspects that we had to shut away from ourselves and pretend don't exist in us, maybe it was our loudness, our boisterousness, our leadership, our strength. Maybe there was something about us that threatened someone in the home. And so we stopped being those things. Then what happens is we push those down into our unconscious mind. And whatever is unconscious, we think that it's gone, but it actually plays out in our life in all these sneaky little ways, these little undercurrent ways. And they steal our aliveness, they steal our joy. They keep us thinking that we are not acceptable the way that we are. And these things that we put into our unconscious mind unconsciously. So we didn't intentionally do it, right? We unconsciously did it. And it was an automatic thing that happened in us to stay safe. But when we did that, what happens is this is the shadow. This is what we call the shadow. And in the shadow isn't just dark things. It could be some of the things that are really wonderful aspects of yourself. And it also could just be parts of you that if you had a better relationship with them, you might not be so extreme in one way or the other. I'll give you an example. Let's just say that you became a people pleaser as a strategy to win the love and approval of other people. And you knew exactly what to say and do so that you didn't get into trouble and you didn't get hurt and you didn't upset or disappoint anyone. And so you say being mean, being unaware of other people's feelings is super duper bad, right? Now, there's another person you see in the world, perhaps, who is meaner. They tend to say no when they don't want to do something, and they don't overly accommodate other people. And you're just like, gosh, I mean, why are they not being accommodating? And why did they say no? And I was a super people pleaser in my female friendships. And there was this woman who she just had no problem saying no when she didn't want to do something. And I felt that it was like an attack when she would say no because I was so extreme as a people pleaser that saying no felt mean. But over time, as I started to realize my people pleasing was a strategy, not fully my whole authentic self, right? Like it was a part of me that I had maybe used as a mask. It felt like it was me, but it wasn't fully me. I realized, wait a second, a little bit of meanness. I'm not talking about going all the way over there to become mean, but a little bit of meanness so I can maybe say no sometimes might not be so bad. If we start to see that maybe we're way far on one end of a polarity and they're way far on the other end of the polarity, and maybe not. They just might look that way. And maybe we could just take a dose. I call it have a drop of that other characteristic. What we lose is the flexibility to choose. We just automatically go into that pattern. Oh, people pleasing, or we go automatically into defensiveness. We go automatically into confidence and superiority, or we automatically go into playing small and shrinking. We automatically go into perfectionism and trying to make sure that we take care of all the details, or we automatically go into the person who's good and cooperative, whatever it is. And what I want is for us to have more flexibility to choose who we be in the world. But I also want us to feel a reclamation of all the aspects of ourselves that we had to abandon. I want us to reclaim those aspects. So, in the whole soul way, what we do is we walk that path of understanding the ways that we learn to cope with our circumstances and how those caused us to turn away from ourselves, how those caused us to abandon aspects of ourselves, feelings, ways of being, the wholeness of who we are. Many of us even lost connection to our hearts, to our bodies. We're just up in our heads, over identifying with our thoughts, intellectualizing and analyzing. And we don't even have full access to this whole body of ours, the heart and the gut. And having connection to more than our heads will also give us a sense of wholeness. Well, why do you think we might have cut off from our bodies and our hearts? Well, because when we were abandoned emotionally, physically, psychologically, energetically, at some level, we also had to cut off from our heart because it was too painful to bear. It was too painful to bear that we got left, the feeling of being alone, the wondering where they went, and then all the ways that we thought, this is because of us. I did something wrong. This is my fault. Or the deep pain, the core wound, especially the younger we were. And I have a hunch that it even probably is painful for us when we get taken away from our mom, when we get taken out of the womb. And that's an abandonment wound right there. I have a hunch. So don't make anyone wrong on this. It's okay. I don't want you to keep going on through your whole life thinking that these wounds are permanent. They aren't. They are repairable. If we understand that core wound is the way we abandon ourselves, it puts us into the driver's seat. Because, yeah, the first thing that happened was we experienced something that in our body, emotionally and energetically, felt like aloneness, abandonment, an ache, hurt, the deep well of pain that came up for us. But the thing that we did was we turned away from ourselves in that moment because it was too much to bear and we were powerless. And the only thing that we could do was protect ourselves. So we protected ourselves, which meant that we had to leave ourselves. So, how is it repairable? Well, the first step is just knowing that that's what's causing a lot of your problems in your life. It's probably causing a lot of your relational issues. It's probably causing you to feel like you're never enough, you're never good enough, maybe that you're too much. Any sense that you have that you can't trust, if you feel a sense of control, or a sense of deep loneliness. Those are just a few examples. If you're feeling those feelings, the core is self-abandonment. So if it's self-abandonment, what if we stop abandoning ourselves? What if we start building a relationship with ourselves and getting to know all of ourselves? Like we are literally the best friend you've ever had, the curious best friend that wants to know everything about you, who wants to know all of your secrets and your darkness and your light and your brightness, and they can handle all of you. Imagine being that for yourself. You step in as the parent that you most needed and wanted as a child, the one that did listen, the one that slowed down, who saw how you felt, who was there for your feelings. And in that process, we start to dip our toe into feeling the feelings that we couldn't feel when we were little because they were too much to bear. But now we're an adult, so we can handle feeling those feelings. So we start to sit with our feelings more, sit with those emotions and say, I'm here. You're not alone. I'm so sorry when you were little. You had to go through that all alone. I'm here with you. I'm not going to leave you. I'm not going to abandon you. I know that you experienced that. I'm going to practice never abandoning you again. I remember there was a time in my marriage when I first understood this. I didn't understand it the way that I understand it now, but I understood that my marriage was never, ever going to become what I wanted it to be if I continued to make everyone else in my life the priority except for me. And so I said to my husband, and I'm not sure I would recommend this because it could have been something I might have kept to myself, but it's okay. It's a little bit funny because it seems harsh. But I said to him, I just want you to know that from here on out, I'm married to myself first. I'm married to myself first. I'm married to you second. And so I cultivated this relationship, this loving partnership, this friendship, this relationship with my inner child so that I would no longer abandon myself, that I would turn toward myself before I made decisions. By the way, just to be clear, even though I made that proclamation to my husband, it took me until probably now, until I could feel like I really do check in with myself first. I really do tune into my heart and my needs and my feelings in that moment. And I acknowledge them and I'm with myself. And then I make decisions from the place of coming into relationship with myself first. It doesn't mean I don't ever put someone else's needs ahead of mine. I do. That doesn't mean that I don't ever choose to be kind when I could have easily just been irritable. I do. It's not as if because I embraced all aspects of myself, I became this person who is unpredictably volatile or something. It's the exact opposite, actually, because the more I know myself, the more I am aware of all of my ways of being in the antics and the patterns. Now I have the flexibility to choose. I have more present moment awareness. We only get that when we're not spending so much energy trying to suppress all these things over here. And they're like beach balls popping up all the time. When we say everything is welcome, I'm holding all of you. When it's in our conscious awareness, we can choose. I remember another time in my marriage when I tweaked it a little bit. I said to my husband, well, I'm married to myself first, but I'm kind of married to consciousness first. And that's what I would say is the next way to explain it is that it's consciousness. It's how do we bring things from our unconscious mind into our conscious mind so that we can look at it, get real with it, and then sort of see how it fits into our life. But also to accept it, to say, hey, you know what? Like you're here for a reason. Join the party. I have a meditation on Insight Timer that's called Your Inner Party. And it's about that. It's really about welcoming all of your parts to the party and realizing that every part of you really does have a purpose. And the key thing is to choose, to be able to choose. That's probably a better way to put it, is to be able to choose, to have the flexibility and the self-awareness and the expansiveness of self, the expansiveness into the wholeness of who you are, so that you can choose in any given moment which thing you're going to do and which thing you're not. If you're listening to this and you don't know what consciousness means, listen, it's okay. Consciousness means that you are consciously aware. There aren't things that are happening beneath the surface that you don't even know are happening. Now, let me just be really clear on this. I think bringing things from the unconscious mind to the conscious mind is a constant excavation. I don't know that I would ever know if I have nothing left in my unconscious mind. How would I possibly know that? Because it's unconscious means it's beneath my awareness. It's beneath my conscious awareness. For me personally, and what I teach in the Whole Soul Way, I think the best way to find all of the parts of ourselves that we have disconnected from are to find them almost like a scavenger hunt, or I call it a search and rescue mission, that we find ourselves oftentimes through our behaviors, through what we see in other people. So there's a lesson that's in season 1. It's early on in the first 6 episodes. It's called Everyone's a Mirror and a Messenger. And if you're curious about this, it's a great one to look at, because the idea is that we are always seeing ourselves reflected in other people. And the best way to learn the parts that we've cut off from ourselves are often in the ways that we judge other people, or the way that we might have these shoulds or requirements for ways of acting in the world, the ways that we get emotionally triggered by people. They're usually touching on some type of wound, a place that got hurt, or a place that we learned that was unacceptable. So, the best way to find all of these parts of ourselves is to be open to the possibility that everything that's happening in life is there, showing us what we need to know so that we can reclaim our wholeness. I believe we came here to shine our light, to be our truest selves, to really truly be who we were put here to be. And I think that what happens in our childhood is exactly what needs to happen for our survival, for us to be able to live in this world, to be able to function. I think we have to build a healthy ego structure. And then, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as you move up the hierarchy and you get your basic needs met, and you have safety and security, and I'm not even sure what else, housing, things like that, right? You have certain basic needs met. And someday I should memorize that. As we move up the hierarchy, we then have the ability to tap into things like self-esteem and belonging and self-actualization. And these are places where we get to go back and reclaim ourselves. We live in the first half of our life with the ego in charge. And the second half, we get to decide that we're going to let our soul be our true guide. But there's a transition period in there where we have to shift from ego-led living to soul-led living. And that's what the Whole Soul Way guides us on, is that journey along the way. And I want all of us to reclaim ourselves. I want all of us to stop self-abandoning, to come into this relationship with ourselves, and to bring our whole selves into our lives, into our work, into our relationships. I wonder this, if we've abandoned ourselves and we're in a relationship with someone else and they abandon themselves, who are we even in a relationship with? Neither one of us really even have connection to ourselves. So what are we doing? We're just using a bunch of coping mechanisms and patterns and following rules and roles and responsibilities. But are we being real and raw? Are we being our true selves? Generally, I would say no. And I would say that because of my experience working with other people, and absolutely because of my own experience and me watching how much of my marriage had been these patterns, these rules, these roles, these conditioning, the ways you're supposed to be in the world, and all of the ways that we weren't really connecting. And I'm in awe of how much that just was what I thought relationship was. But now, as we step more fully, and I can't say we're there, more fully over and over and over again, incrementally toward bringing our authentic selves into the relationship, it requires a lot because we're having to navigate more unpredictability. Like, I don't necessarily know how he's going to feel about this situation, and he doesn't know how I am. And can we bring our full selves in that moment? Can we show up more vulnerably? That's been one of the hardest things. I really believe that in order to have closeness, we have to have deeper levels of vulnerability and the ability to reveal our hearts to people. Well, if I'm disconnected from my heart, how am I going to reveal that? So, this journey, this reclamation is coming back into connection with the wide range of feelings we have, all aspects of humanity, and developing this kind of relationship where we are connected internally. We become tethered within and we become the source. We become the source of everything in our lives. So, self abandonment is so solvable. It is a truly solvable problem. That's what I love about understanding it this way, that, yeah, you might have been abandoned. Yeah, you were, I'm sure, very rejected by many people over the years. You have been hurt over and over and over again. But we don't have to keep hurting ourselves. We don't have to keep rejecting ourselves. We don't have to perpetuate the wounds from the first half of our lives, or let's just say from everything prior to now. We don't have to perpetuate that. We can treat ourselves with love and kindness and care and compassion. We can be the parents that we most needed and wanted as children. We can fulfill the unmet emotional and other needs from our childhood. It's amazing. It is 100% possible. And just knowing it starts to open up some possibilities for us. It starts to speak to our soul a little. Like, your soul might be like, yeah, yeah, that's possible. Taking a breath in and saying, yes, it is possible. And you still have an ego who hears this conversation is like, no, 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 no. Safety first, everybody. Safety first. Survival first. Acceptance and approval first. So you may have a little internal reaction too, some fear that comes up around it. And let me talk to your ego for 1 second. And I want to tell your ego something. We are not telling you that you have to go away. We appreciate you so much for everything you have done. Look at you. You've brought us here. You've kept us alive. You have helped us to build wonderful lives, and we appreciate you so much. We are not trying to make you go away. We just want you to take us on a trip backwards in time to find all those parts that you hid so resourcefully and creatively to keep us safe. Thank you so much. But we want you to now show us those parts. And I promise you, we are going to be safe and slow. We're not going to do things faster than you can handle them. We are not going to disrupt things so fast that it's too scary. We trust you and we want to listen to you. And we also want you to hear us too. Okay? We're going to do this together. That's what I want your ego to know, is that we're not going to just come in and rip things apart and cause all kinds of upheaval. No, slow, incremental, tiny little steps to reclaim all of you. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. And at some point, your ego will feel more on board with this, but it takes time because she's been the boss. Your ego has been the one in charge for all of your life, always running the show. And guess what? Your ego doesn't fully trust that you have any other part of you that can come in consistently to make sure that everything is handled. And that's why in the Whole Soul Way, you learn the step-by-step journey. That's what you learn, the step-by-step journey and how to step in as your inner adult and really negotiate with all of your parts. This may sound similar to internal family systems if you've done any work on that. Before IFS became a thing, inner child reparenting was a thing. There have been plenty of people out there who have had many, many, many different ways of looking at inner child reparenting. For me personally, IFS kept me a little too stuck in my head. I tried it after I had already released the whole soul way, and I found myself too analytical with it. And one of the things I like about the whole soul way is it sort of breaks things down into this more accessible to me way of doing it, a little warmer, softer, and I didn't have to know every single part. I had to just trust that if a part was coming up at any given moment, then they were worthy of being attended to. That every aspect of me that I see in other people, that I judge in other people, that I see in myself and I maybe judge in myself, every one of those aspects is worthy of being seen and maybe someday loved. Self-abandonment, the big problem that we all have to solve. That's the one, and it's solvable. I want you to imagine elation is the opposite of what you felt when you were abandoned. To be elated is to be joyous, to be happy, to feel the sense of elation in your body. Elation is that sense of expansion into the aliveness, that wholeness of who we are. Self-abandonment and abandonment are the cutting off from or the fragmentation. In order to feel elated and alive fully, we have to explore life at the edges. We have to go out there pushing up against those edges of what we think is acceptable, and then start to look beyond a little bit into what else is possible for me. What other aspects of me have I been cut off from? Because some other random person decided this wasn't acceptable. Or it's been passed on generation to generation. And it might not be random, it might be our parents, but they might have a random idea that it's not acceptable. And they made that decision. Now, what? That's going to just mess with your life for the rest of your life? Or are you going to go up against the edge of what other people determined, culture, society, teachers, priests, friends, siblings, parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents? They all had these ideas of what you should do and shouldn't do. This is good, this is bad. And they told you all those things. And then you put this boundary around you that limited you and made you small and constricted you and put up walls and barriers and all this stuff. And you've been like, I cannot go outside of this. This is the safe zone. This is safe. And then I'm inviting you to say, what if you just peek over the edge a little bit and wonder into what if you're not as dangerous as you fear yourself to be? What if you can trust yourself more than you think you can to know about all of yourself? Like, what if you could trust yourself that even if you look at, know, explore these quote bad things about you, they're not going to consume you. You're just going to look at them. You're going to make decisions. You're going to be in charge of how you show up in the world instead of those unconsciously running the show and keeping you small and shrinking you and confining you and making you feel less alive. So we want to explore way outside there at some point, but let's just start by just looking over the edge and considering the possibility that you might feel more alive if you feel more whole, and you might feel more whole if you explore life at the edges, if you explore life at the edges of those familiar lines that have been created for you. The so-called comfort zone, which by the way is almost never comfortable. It's only comfortable in the scheme of survival and safety and childhood wounds and patterns. It's usually not that comfortable. All right. This was super fun. I really hope you think it's as fun as it is for me to talk about this. But isn't it amazing to imagine that you could solve so many of your problems by just focusing on this one thing called self-abandonment and reclaim a relationship with yourself and continue to find aspects of yourself that you've cut off from and then reclaim them into your wholeness. And then that could be the source of you becoming happier, more fulfilled, having more fun in your life, having better relationships, being able to put yourself out there and do the thing that you've been wanting to do, but you're scared to do. I know. It's awesome and exciting.